Happy, happy, happy day. How are you? I hope you're doing great and you're having a fabulous week, and it's almost the weekend. So why not spend some time today with me, Bernadette Bose of uh, of Ball of Fire Coaching, and this is Power Hour Coaching, where each week we give you the opportunity and a platform to get any of the questions, stories, or challenges that you're dealing with within the workplace or even at home addressed and taken care of and discussed, so you can have the tips, advice, sometimes tough love that will help you continue to move forward and really become that powerhouse leader that you are meant to be. Because that's what Ball of Fire is all about. It is about transforming corporate professionals into that powerhouse leader that they want to be and their people and companies need. So during this conversation today, we're going to be talking about how to become a people leader. And so we're going to break down exactly what is a people leader? And actually, I call it CPL, Chief People Leader, and wrapping your heads around the fact that it is a role that you play in your work and life each and every day, whether you have people that report to you or you do not. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about what is a leader. Of course, there's tremendous number of traits and qualities and skills within leadership, but we're going to really hone in on the aspect of leadership when it comes to people. We're going to talk the differences between being a boss or a manager and being a true leader, why you should care. We'll talk about that. And then what are some things, what are some steps you could be taking right now in order for you to really hone in on your people leadership style? Okay. And at any time during this live broadcast, or even if you're watching this in replay, please post your comment. And I will be sure to look out for it during the live, but also if it is posted after we've gone live, I'll keep an eye out for it, because we are broadcasting through LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And so wherever you might post your comment or question, I will get back to you directly. All right. Lastly, when it comes to us streaming through StreamYard, if you should want to let me know your name and to see your smiley face, then you may need to be given them authorization to do so. So you might find kind of some instructions in this post that will provide you exactly how to do that. Okay. All right. There was one other thing I wanted to make sure, but I'll think about it and we'll get back to it. All right. So how do you become a people leader? And first off, what is a leader? And so the formal definition of a leader is the ability of an individual or group to influence and guide others. So what I kind of pull out from that, especially as it relates to people, is and your ability to become a people leader is that word ability. It's the ability of a individual or group to influence others. Why that word ability is so critical is because if you've ever experienced a boss who is definitely lacking in their people skills, then you obviously have seen a lack of ability to influence others. So it is a skill, it's a trait, it's a quality. It's one that is learned. So we could get into the whole debate about whether or not leaders are born or learned, but we won't. We just know that if you right now feel that you are struggling in regards to really relating and connecting and engaging and influencing and leading your people, then really look at the fact that you just might not have the skills that you need. You may not have really paid attention and become self-aware to the qualities and the traits of being able to lead. And that's okay, because obviously self-awareness is the number one and the first thing you would want to be addressing. And then you can find the resources and the support and the training in order for you to learn that. And what I want to be able to do today before we end this conversation is to kind of paint a picture of what it looks like, and then give you some 1 to 3 actions you could start taking right now so you can start working on it. Because again, leaders are not necessarily born, they are grown, they are raised, they are skilled, they are taught, and they are developed. All right. And leadership as a whole is not something that you have it and it's done and over with. Leadership is a daily practice. If you're going to do it right and you're going to become that powerhouse leader that you're meant to be. So really kind of pick out the words when it comes to what is a leader, the ability to influence others to follow. Now, there's the whole debate about also, does a leader follow from the front, like the old adage, the old school, or from the rear? And we're going to talk about that as well. But what the biggest aspect of everything that we want to talk about is differentiating you from the typical boss or manager as opposed to a true leader, because there is drastic differences. And a lot of times in my client coaching sessions, let alone in my training or my speaking, people will acknowledge how intentional I am when I use the word a boss or a manager versus when I use the term leader. Because if you can look around and find individuals in the workplace that you're not really thrilled about working for, you don't really regard and respect the way that they do manage their people, it's probably because of the fact that they don't have those abilities to really lead just yet. And hopefully someone will, point it out to them and they can get the help and the support that they need. Because again, these all are, these skills, traits, and qualities are learned, though it does require practice on a regular basis. So let's talk about what the differences are between what many might be as a boss / manager and then a leader. So as I mentioned, bosses typically lead from the front. They want to be in the front and they want to be in control. They want to be in that authority position. They lead from the front. Leaders, true leaders, recognize that they empower and entrust in their people, and they allow them to lead, and they lead from the rear. So a big difference. And you can always look at your own style and those around you to kind of see how do they position themselves when it comes to their leadership role. Okay. So bosses / managers, they also really drive their people. They really just kind of push them to get the job done, to get the results, to do what it is that they need them to do, versus a leader intentionally, purposely, patiently develops, coaches their people. They recognize that if they're going to be successful, they need their people to be successful. And for their people to be successful, not only successful, but even motivated, inspired to really show up and do the work, then they have to be given the tools and the resources and the support via coaching, training, development in order for them to get the best out of their people. So bosses, managers, they tend to drive, not really focused on developing and coaching, and leaders coach. And, I don't know about you, but I can look back at my entire career, from my late teens all the way into my 40s. And I can definitely pick out the contrast between many, many, many bosses that I've had, that some are definitely bosses. They never focused on what it was that I needed, what it would take for me to move to the next level. Therefore, what support and what coaching, development, training, they needed to provide me. And then there was a handful that certainly kind of recognized that and certainly gave me the opportunity to get the support that I needed in order to move to the next level. So consider that for yourself or for someone that you're working with, as far as really helping them, move from being a boss / manager to being a true leader. Bosses tend to kind of beat their chest and really want to always be the one to know how something should be done, as opposed to a leader shows their people, how to do it, and then even entrusts them to do it. And we'll talk about that in a second, but then even trust them to do it, as opposed to kind of having to do it themselves. So there's also a sense of control that a boss slash manager wants to maintain, and a leader knows they can't and they shouldn't totally control, and therefore they let go of their vanity, they let go of their pride, they let go of their ego, and they allow their people to learn, fail, and grow. All right, big differences between the two. And speaking of control, bosses slash managers, they tend to not trust their people to get the job done, especially get the job done the way they want it done, the way they think they could do it better. And yet leaders, again, they recognize that, you know what? I might be the best person to get this thing done, but that's not my role and responsibility. That's not my job. I need to trust my team members, even those that are very inexperienced, and to learn and to test, fail, and eventually acquire that same level of skill, that same level of knowledge and expertise as they have. And so there's a trust factor that also comes in. And I do a tremendous amount of work with individuals and teams when it comes to trust. And I know from my own experience, because trust me when I say I had a lot of control issues in my corporate years. And I would probably walk away from that experience and looking at it today and say, definitely I was a boss slash manager. I wasn't a leader. Because of that, I can, openly kind of smell and sense when there's an individual who is really struggling to be an effective leader, because they're not willing to let go. They're not willing to trust. They're not willing to even put aside their own vanity and ego and allow someone else to even step in the spotlight and to take, I'll call it credit, because we're going to talk about that, but take credit for something. And so if you want to be a true people leader, you really need to recognize that you have to let all of that go. And it's almost, I use the analogy with my clients a lot about parents and children. And I'm not a parent other than to four-legged friends. But for those of you who are, then simply relate. What would you want your child, what experience, what coaching, what development, are you providing your child when it comes to them learning how to ride a bike, learning how to, meet new people, and then all of a sudden learning how to be on their own at college and so forth and so on. That's exactly the type of tender, loving care and support your people want from you, and they need from you, and they deserve to have from you if you are a true leader. And so you just need to kind of let go, just like you have to your children. You have to let go of your own, ego, vanity, pride, and control, and just trust your people to do what they need to do. And yes, they will, hopefully test and retest or practice. But should they not and go full steam ahead and they screw up, or they, fail, which I hate that word, because they learn something from that, then you have to be okay with that. And of course, if it's something that is going to be life-threatening or totally detrimental to the business, you're not going to just let them, kind of go out into the wilderness on their own. You're going to provide them some sort of support, mentoring, whether it's from you or somebody else. So, but this point is, you need to let them go and let go of that control and trust them to do what they need to do. And believe me when I say that will instill such pride and appreciation and satisfaction and, a sense of value and worth in your people that, they kind of cling on to you immediately as a result of it, because they see that you're allowing them to do what they need to do, and even stretch themselves. And you're there to kind of back them up and support them. Bosses, managers, they are ones that inspire through fear, as opposed to through motivation, inspiration, enthusiasm, belief in their people. And this is another area that I was a master of. And many people will hear me say that I used to get off on creating fear in people. There was nothing better to me than to walk in a room, especially if it was a conference room or a big training room, whatever the case might be, and have people very hesitant or feeling intimidated or nervous around me. How sick is that? And I'll admit it. I'll be the first one to acknowledge that that is anything but true leadership. And so, if you have one of those bosses that, would rather instill fear in you, instill negativity in you, and doubt, and feelings of low self-worth, then that certainly isn't a leader of any kind, let alone a people leader. You're looking for, from others as well as from yourself, to want to really master inspiring, motivating, being positive, honoring and recognizing and acknowledging and praising your people. So another little, slang thing is, bosses will say, go. And leaders will say, let's go. And there's a big difference between those two. They both have the word go in it, but one is go, do it. And the other one is let's go. Yeah, let's go. And that even implies I'm with you. And let alone the, motivating, inspiring energy that's behind that. So you can see the contrast between the two. And then I had mentioned that bosses, managers, they'll often take credit for whatever's being done, especially if it's done by you. They're going to take credit for it. Whereas leaders are confident, leaders feel empowered, leaders feel secure in who they are and in their position, that when they do go and they let go of the control, and they inspire and motivate and enthusiasm no and enthusiastically assign additional work, or not additional work, but stretch work to their people, they're standing behind them going, let's go, yeah, you got this. And they're saying, good job. Joanne did that, or Tom, did an awesome job in regards to that very difficult and very challenging, assignment, and let alone the fact that he wasn't even, experienced in it a week ago, whatever the case might be. And so, that is also a big difference. And it's really important for any one of us who are responsible for people in our work or in our life to really focus and pay attention and assess themselves as far as, am I being a boss / manager? Am I controlling? Am I demanding? Am I not trusting? Am I all the things that we just talked about, which just went, am I leading from the front as opposed to, entrusting my people to actually lead everyone, including myself, versus am I someone who, gets off on inspiring and motivating and advancing and coaching and mentoring and developing people. And if you ever, if you feel that, oh, wow, I'm definitely on the left side with the boss / manager, or even like I skew over maybe into the middle, I'm not quite over to the people leader side, it's okay. It's perfectly okay. The first step is acknowledging it, is being self-aware of it. And then, like I said, going out and finding the resources and the tips and the tools and the people that can help and support you. All right. And we will talk about that in just a minute. So I really want you to just kind of consider for yourself, where are you on the pendulum? If you were to put all of these different um, characteristics that I just laid out onto a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being boss, 10 being leader, especially people leader, then where would you fall? And I'm emphasizing people leader because obviously leadership, is all about people. However, there's a lot of aspects where people get into from leadership when it comes to just, being a good communicator. So oftentimes it's individual and then it's external, or I should say internal. An individual as a good communicator, a good influencer, a good negotiator, a good inspirer, so forth and so on. And then there's the external. There's, how do you use that and all those traits and qualities and skills to then connect and bring in from a people perspective. Oftentimes, and I will say it regularly, is we are all leaders in our work and our life, whether we have people assigned to us or not. And touching on that, and I've told the story before, but I had a mentor slash colleague back in my corporate days. And I would say now it's probably been about 15, 16 years that this encounter kind of happened. So I was walking down the hall and I see him standing in his office, and he's standing there in front of this whiteboard. And the whiteboard has a big org chart on it with the head that was at the top and all their people. And it wasn't his team. It was his peers organization chart team. But then his name was kind of off to the right, all by itself, his name written up there. And so he's looking at it like intently. And so as I pass by and I see him, I'm like, hey, what's up? And he said, well, I'm trying to figure out, how do I influence and lead all of these people on this org chart who none of them are directly assigned to me. Like, I'm kind of a one-off and I don't have any of them directly responsible to me. And I'm trying to figure out, how do I do my, it has everything to do with how do you engage with them? How do you connect with them? How do you bring them into the fold and, help them to see how your role is going to be in support of their role, whether it's his peer or any of the senior managers under that, let alone the people on the street, quite simply. And I said, so what you have to do is just focus on, how do you connect with them? How do you inspire them and motivate them and give them reason to focus on your priorities and your needs so that you get what you need and they get what they need at every level. And I said, and that will make you successful and it will make them successful. So don't get hung up. And I'm now talking to all of you. Don't get hung up on whether or not you have people directly responsible or directly lined to you, and that makes you a leader or not. You could be a solo and still be a leader and still be able to influence and guide and inspire and motivate and coach and develop and move the needle when it comes to not only their success, but your success and the company's success. All right. So I just wanted to make sure I pointed that out as well. Now, people will often ask me, which stuns me sometimes, but they'll put it as frankly as, why should I care? Like, why should I be investing? And this will come up when I'm talking or maybe I'm proposing short or long-term training development around, for their leaders. Like, why should I invest in this? Why should I care? Well, there's a tremendous number of reasons of why anyone at work or at home, and especially if you do have people assigned to you and you're responsible for, and you want, let's think, let's think selfishly for a second. If you want to be successful, your people have to be successful, because they're the ones going to make you successful. They're the ones that are doing the work, that are, taking the instruction, that are working the hours in order for you to accomplish your goals. So why should you care? That's like, when I get that question, especially from, I'll call them bosses, managers, it's the first indication to me that yes, this individual would certainly benefit from getting leadership support, coaching support, mentoring, training, something, so they can shift that mindset. Because if you are a manager, a professional in business, in any kind of business, small, big, it doesn't matter what industry, doesn't matter about anything. If you are in business, you absolutely have to be concerned and genuinely interested in your people. So why should you care? First off, you're human, right? And I say that because we all have bosses. Even the CEO of a conglomerate has a boss, stakeholders, shareholders, a board. Everyone has a boss, right? And so if that's the case, how do you want to be treated? It's almost like the golden rule: treat others as you want to be treated. So, you should care, because you certainly don't want all of those aspects that we talked about when it came to boss/manager, right? So why would you expect that your people would? We're all human, and we all want to be treated as humans, okay? Let alone, and this has always been the case, but I'll emphasize, I'll put a exclamation point at the end of it, because of the last 3 years. But the last 3 years, another gift we've received from it, and I say another because I've had a number of conversations this week, online and off, in regards to the gifts that we've gained from the last 3 years. And one of those gifts is the fact that people are becoming very, very aware of other people's mental health and the need for them to have very, strong, firm, empowered mindsets. Mental health is kind of coming up and bubbling up and actually boiling over to be a top of mind topic for business leaders as well as individuals around the world. And that's a beautiful thing, because again, we're human. The old adage that you leave your emotions at the door, it's always never, or does that make sense? It's never been truth, because we don't. And the idea that we even ask for someone to leave all of their personal stuff at the door and kind of, just assume that, they don't need it to boil over into their work environment and into the work life. Well, that makes us really ignorant and naive people if we think that is or has ever been the case. Now, I certainly lived under that adage that, yes, leave your emotions at the door. And trust me when I say, I think it had a huge factor on just how my style of leadership when I was in corporate for those 25 years. And it wasn't people leader in any way, shape, or form, because I did have all of this personal and professional, emotional, spiritual, mental stuff and junk and beauty going on, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly. And all of that affects every aspect of one's life. So we can't expect that when they show up at the door, they're robots and they're going to leave all of that behind. It's just not going to happen. And so I do, recognize that others are taking note of that and trying to figure out how then do they as individuals, let alone as businesses, how do they support their people to ensure that their mental health is of consideration. Because it means either success or devastation, not only for that person, but if we don't start recognizing it and supporting it, then it does seep in to our team dynamics and then ultimately our business results. So, you should care because of that as well. At the same time, all of this, someone being a boss slash manager versus a leader, well, it's the number one reason people leave companies. And so companies are losing time and time again really good, high potential, high producing, high performing individuals, not because of the company, not because of the work, but because of the person managing them. And that in itself should horrify people, especially those responsible for, hiring, promoting, and then developing and training or not individuals. Because it's one thing if someone left because, all of a sudden they had a personal reason for having to leave, they moved, whatever the case might be. But it's another reason why it being that you have bosses slash managers in positions that are not supporting their people and creating some of the havoc and chaos that we talked about earlier. And then at the same time, and I use this quite often in my coaching with my clients, not necessarily when I have to convince them, but most of the time when I start working with them, they know, how important their people are and should be. And yet they may, like we talked about at the very beginning, they may just need to learn the ability to influence and guide others. But what I'll emphasize to them is you're making your job really, really difficult when you're not putting your people first. You could be making your job and accomplishing your goals and being successful so easily by giving your people what it is that they need in order to be successful themselves. Because when you lift others up, you're lifted up. And so I'll often say to them, if you really want to stop kind of feeling as if you're just drowning and overwhelmed and being beat up, well, then take a look at what your leadership style or what your desired leadership style is, what your people leadership style is, and wherever there's gaps that are causing strain and difficulty and overwhelm for you, well, just like what we laid out, that contrast between managers and leaders, then start really becoming that people leader that are you're entrusting to help you accomplish your goals, as opposed to dictating or commanding or simply wanting to sit there and direct and control everything. So why you should care about whether or not you're a people leader or not is because you're making your job really hard by not giving them all the support and the coaching and the mentoring and the training and the development that they need so that they can do what it is that you need them to do very successfully, because that'll make you successful. And then lastly, a big reason why you should care if you're a people leader or not. One who really focuses on inspiring and motivating and being enthusiastic and positive and coaching and developing and mentoring and lifting your people up, is because it will be the difference between success or devastation. I'll call it devastation because I don't like the word failure. And so it will make the difference. Now, I will have clients that will challenge me on that and say, well, quite honestly, my business is great. Our business numbers are fabulous. And I'll have to challenge it by simply asking questions, because that's my job as a coach, but asking questions about, is it your contribution? Is it your actual, involvement in the business that made those numbers, or did you have help, meaning even economical external factors played a part in your business being lifted up? And or is it because there's a lot of other safety guards that many managers have around them within their business that oftentimes hides and disguises their lack of people leadership, and therefore they can still accomplish their goals and objectives, and yet um they're not, on a scale of 1 to 10 that we talked about earlier, they would not kind of hit even the 5, 6, 7 of a people leader. And so it's the saying that your people are your number one assets, it was a very overused term and phrase for a really long time, 10, 15, 20 years ago. People are your number one assets. It has to come back. And I sense, and this is a conversation that I had with someone the other day for quite a while, I definitely see and observe and sense that is coming back. Over the last 4 years, businesses are recognizing that people have to be their number one focus and therefore their number one asset, and providing them what it is they need to be successful. Now, the key in that, which is fabulous, right? That's awesome. But the key is going to be, are the individuals managing these people, are they bought in on really acting and executing on being a people leader? And so that is everything that we're here talking about. So I want to provide you, if you've kind of looked at yourself and maybe based on even what we've already discussed, and you say, you know what, I'm kind of not the best at really connecting or relating or giving my people what it is that they need. First off, it's okay to acknowledge that, by the way. You may not be running to your boss acknowledging it, but you doing a self-assessment, and assessments are something that are, that is done regularly within my practice. But if you are self-assessing yourself and you're like, you know what, I could use some work and some practice on how I'm connecting with my people. Because remember, even I had acknowledged that for 25 years, I was operated like a robot. I didn't even care what my people were going through outside and inside the workplace. I just wanted the work done. And trust me when I say there was a lot of ex-me's out there in the world. And so if you have any indication that there's some work to be done, then let me just give you a few tips that you could be using right now. And trust me when I say these tips are even things that I work on, with corporate leaders at every level of an organization, individually and or as a team. So don't, these aren't, they're going to sound very simple, and, they should be, but at the same time, if one has never really focused on working on their own self-development, and a good number of people they haven't been given the opportunity, it hasn't really bubbled up for them. Then use this as an opportunity for you to kind of do some of that self-development, self-awareness, self-care type of work, with the whole goal of just becoming a powerhouse people leader. All right. Or what we called a CPL earlier, a chief people leader, because it will transform you, and it will transform the success of your people, of your company, and of your own business. Therefore, you're more successful. Okay. So the first one I would suggest doing is taking some time and sitting down and really laying out what your preferred leadership style is. How would you like to be perceived as a leader? And kind of craft it almost like an avatar of the type of leader you'd like to be. And how you'd like to be perceived, and what would people say about you, and what would your legacy be as a leader. Take some time to really just, even whether or not you're the type that bullets out things, or you're the type to tell a story, or you're the type to just kind of do some descriptions. There's no right or wrong in that, but just lay out what kind of leader do you want to be, and keeping in mind, really, at least with the conversation we're having today, around your people. Okay. And then what I would do is as you're kind of focused on this and as you start to work into what we're going to talk about next around some practices you can put into place, just ensure that you're being genuine and intentional and purposeful about it. There's nothing worse than, and I don't see it often, but it happens when someone's given feedback. So-called manager is given some feedback about the fact that they're not connecting and they're not relating, and people are intimidated by them or fearful of them or whatever the case might be. And it's hurting their job. It's hurting their opportunities going forward, so forth and so on. And so they treat it like a kind of a to-do list. They treat it as if something they're going to check off. And they go about what I'll call connecting. They might schedule a call with their people, one-on-one, and they may even do it, week after week or month after month. But it's not genuine desire and want to really learn about their people, connect with them, relate with them, understand them as human beings. And so it's my job as a coach to kind of pick that up and recognize that and help them course correct. But for you, you're going to define your leadership style and then just ensure that you're going to be genuine and authentic and intentional about it. All right. And sometimes, and I know there's, you can argue for quite a bit around fake it till you make it. That had been my mantra and continues to be since I was in my early 20s. And how I look at that is you may not initially be a good connector, a good relator. You might be an introvert. You might be someone who just, hasn't really kind of formed those type bonds with people, especially in the workplace. Maybe you have the mindset that no, business, the workplace is business, not people. So go easy on yourself, but just push yourself to practice and do it because eventually it will become natural and a part of you. All right. So genuine, intentional, purposeful as you go through it too. So then pick some practices. I often say 1 to 3 and keep it at the max of 3. 3 things that you could be doing on a regular basis to really practice how you can connect to people. So what are some of those things? Well, one is that will create immediate response from your people is to be just positive. Even with all hell breaking loose around you. And I have some clients there's a lot of change and transformation, and I'll call chaos going on around them. And yet there is definitely distinction between those that are operating as managers and those that are operating as leaders, because the leaders are, recognizing that all this chaos is going on around them, let alone their people. And yet they're steadfast in being positive, enthusiastic, optimistic. They're being upfront and honest. And, another, practice that they're having in that kind of situation is that they're also communicating and over communicating. But all I would want you to focus on is really focus on just what can you do that even with all the chaos that might be going on around you at home or at work, be positive, enthusiastic, and really work on inspiring your people. All right. The next thing would be definitely to work on and whether it's scheduling or setup or find ways in your status meetings, on your one-on-ones, in your, smaller groups, whether it's with your direct people, your peers, or your seniors, just work on connecting. This was a really uncomfortable place for me back while I was in corporate. I'm just not a BSer. Like I'm not somebody who's just going to want to kind of, what do they call that? Just kind of banter back and forth. Oh, how are you? How are your kids? What did you do for vacation? I was very much, okay, what do we need to get done today? Type of individual. And yet I recognized 2 years later, I recognized what lost opportunity I had to really form some very tight bonded relationships, not only with my people, but with my peers and my seniors. So, work on ways every day to connect with your people, get to know them, learn about them personally and professionally. What are their interests? What are their hobbies? Where do their kids go to school? What do they do on the weekends? One post I made on LinkedIn, actually, it was when I would send out invitations to people that I really wanted to meet and get to know. Um, my opening wasn't the standard LinkedIn note. It was all about kind of what is your hobbies on the weekends? I play pickleball. Do you know what pickleball is? And that created so much conversation. It was awesome because I was actually, working to connect with them, but actually I shared something of myself as well that I knew some people would be like, what in the world is pickleball? And it's quirky and it's unique. And sometimes some people are like, that's awesome. I play pickleball too. The point is just work on ways that you could be connecting with people. Okay. Um, another thing would be to encourage for yourself and then for your people to always be focused on personal growth. That might be through just, working into your conversations, working into your status meetings, maybe some tips, some advice, some mantras, some affirmations, some quotes. You could be reading. You can recommend some reading for your people. I'm not talking heavy duty books. I'm just talking that, simple reading, just where people can kind of focus on themselves and also recognize that you're wanting them to focus on themselves and to develop and grow themselves. Nothing would be better for someone to, hear from their boss, I really, am interested in making sure that you're getting what you need. And we're going to spend some time, working on exactly what is it, what are our personal goals, not just business goals. What is it that we really want? What do you really want? And how can I support you? So that brings me to my next one, which is asking questions. This is definitely something that managers don't do enough and leaders do, is ask questions. Find out from your people, how are you? What can I do to make you successful? What do you need to be productive and to have, what it takes for you to accomplish your job successfully, easily? What is it that I can provide for you? If you're not comfortable coaching or mentoring your people, and I can fully understand that, then those questions are the first kind of entry point into that. Is simply asking, what can I do to help you be successful? Because that's just going to open up a dialogue. At first, it's probably going to, be like, nothing, I'm good, because they're going to be uncomfortable and you're going to be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And you may not have, ever asked your team members that question. So all of a sudden you're asking and they're going to be like, okay, what's happening? Like, what's going on? But you know what? If you do it and you do it genuinely and you're doing it consistently, and yes, they might recognize that, oh, she's starting something different. And I've had clients where I've coached them in this manner, and they've come to me 3, 4, 6 months later, and they've said, oh my gosh, yeah, my, my team is recognized, and now they're not as uncomfortable and they're seeing the benefits from it. And again, your people's benefits, your people's success is what it is you're looking for and driving toward. So you be okay being uncomfortable. Let your people, even acknowledge to your people it's okay to be uncomfortable. And yet at the same time, continue to ask, because eventually that, oh, I'm good, will turn into, you know what? I could use blank. Okay. Now, two critical things for both yourself, outwardly and then inwardly. Outwardly is, be sure that you're giving good, productive, constructive feedback to your people. Too often, I hear managers are only talking to their people about their performance mid-year and end of year. And that's, to me, that's just so unacceptable, unacceptable. Your people need to know, good or bad or ugly, your people need to know consistently, what they need to work on, what they're doing well, what they're doing great, how they need to kind of pivot or course correct. They need to know what you're thinking about and what you're feeling toward them. especially if it is in a way that needs to be a constructive level of feedback. I am so against surprises, so against it. And yet I run across it too often in the coaching that I do, where someone is surprised by the feedback from their manager. That should never happen, ever. Good, bad, or ugly information. That should never happen. And remember, we talked about the contrast between managers and leaders. And managers, take the credit, and leaders give credit. And so honoring one's riches and also course correcting and giving constructive feedback on areas for improvement are critical, and a great, great source and means of really developing your people and having people, having employees that feel fulfilled, feel worthy, feel valued, and are really happy and satisfied with the work that they're doing and the people they're working for and with. Okay. Lastly, this comes to what I said about external and internal. Lastly, you need to be seeking feedback. And again, not just at the end of the year or mid-year, you need to be going out and you need to be seeking feedback from your employees, from your peers, and from your seniors, about how you're doing, what areas you could be working on, what you need to do to get to the next level, what their perception is of you, in your leadership role, what's working, what's not working, so forth and so on. What you should start, stop, and continue. All those things are like pieces of different assessments that one might formally be given in the workplace. I do a lot, or I should say, I have my clients initiate a number of 360 assessments with their people. Some of them use the start, stop, and continue. I also initiate different types of assessments for people to really get a good idea of not only how others feel about them, but also what they're kind of, feeling about themselves and how they're behaving or how they want to be motivated and communicate it to. Self-assessment is huge. And self-assessment not only includes you asking yourself a lot of questions, but also you going out and asking a lot of people questions as well. When I started my own, what I call excavation of my soul journey after I left corporate, and recognizing that I was not the CPL, the chief people leader, in any form while I was in corporate, I sat my 5 sisters and my mother down over cocktails. And I did this, asking them for feedback. And I asked them, give me, 1-word descriptions of, how you perceive me and what you think of me and what you feel for me, good, bad, and the ugly. And trust me when I say they loved giving it. And if you were looking at it, some of it was great, some of it was very painful, but it was the best source of information that I could have been given in order to really recognize the type of leader I was, and which wasn't, and then the type of leader I wanted to be. So define your leadership style. Okay. Be genuine and authentic about it. Identify 3 practices. Now, we went through a number of them, and you can replay this and kind of start scribbling them down and then pick 1 to 3 of them that you can start working on each and every day. Okay. And then if you have any questions or you're, really kind of struggling and you or someone really want to work toward becoming that CPL, that chief people leader, then feel free to book some time with me. We can talk for 30 minutes, talk about your goals, the challenges you're having, and really lay out some next steps. And it will be all about you for that 30 minutes. So feel free to go to coachmebernadette.com/discovery call and schedule some time with me. I'd love to be able to help you. Also, you can go to balloffirecoaching.com. I wrote a short ebook all around the 3 must-have myths to be successful. And basically, they're talking about some of the things we've talked about, which is those old adages, those old beliefs that, you had to leave your emotions at the door. That success is 80% skill set, 20% mindset. those type of things. And so I kind of lay out what the three most critical ones that I definitely wanted to kind of squash. And I then give you some easy tips and practices that you can follow so you can get recognized and rewarded for all the great work that you're doing. So you can go to balloffirecoaching.com and simply put your name and email, and that'll be automatically sent to you. All right. All right. If you should, again, if you should have any comments or questions about anything that we've talked about, or about the fact that I totally trashed my office while we were talking. So if you have any questions or comments about any of that, feel free to post it right here, right now. Or if you're watching this in replay, I hope you had enjoyed that little segment. And feel free to continue to post your comments or questions, and I will reach right back out to you. Okay. So I am Bernadette Bose of Ball of Fire Coaching, and I hope you're here next week for another Power Hour coaching. Take care, everybody. Bye.